Welcome to the Daily Plunge. We are looking at Psalm 3. It was written by King David when he was fleeing his own son Absalom, who was usurping his throne, his kingdom. And we read about that in 2 Samuel chapters 15 through 19. And this trouble is coming David's way, but he sort of created and deserved it because he was a bad and negligent father. And so his own son is leading what seems to be a successful rebellion against him. And even David's friends are not shocked that this is happening. They think he deserves it. And they don't think that God is going to, that he's beyond God's help, that God's not going to deliver him. And many of them, of his friends and associates, go over to Absalom's side. And still, David is a person of faith. Even though there are many attacks and his foes are numerous, he says in verse 3, Lord, you are my shield. David knows that God is his protector, his shield. He says, you're the one who lifts up my head. It's not my situation, my circumstances that lift up my head. It's you, and you lift my head up to see you. Now, David knows that he's not in control, and while everything seems to be collapsing around him, right? He's on the run, he's fleeing, and David is calling out in faith. And even though everything's collapsing, God is still on his holy mountain. God still holds David in his hands. God is still his shield. And I want you to think about that. What horrible crap are you going through in your lives? God is still on his throne. God has not stepped off of his place in your life, and to turn to him and call out to him. And so despite the raging upheavals in this world or in our lives, God is still there. He's not chased away. And even though we're surrounded by foes, like David, we can cry out in faith. And then verse 5, I cry out to faith, and guess what? I lay down and sleep. Think about this. Even though he's under great pressure, anxiety, dire circumstances, he said, yeah, I slept like a rock. He's fine. And why? Because his future is not in his hands, it's in God's. He trusts God. He finds rest, finds Sabbath rest in the Lord. And he says, I wake up the next day because the Lord sustains me. I live to see another day because each day is a gift from God. All my days are numbered by the Lord. And even though there's an army of foes that attacks and assails me, I'm not driven by anxiety. I'm not living by fear, but rather in verse 7, he says, I have confidence in the Lord. Arise, get up, Lord. I know that you are the God who will act. Deliver me. Not because I deserve it, right? Not because I've earned it, but he says, because you are my God and I'm your child. And I'm calling on your promises, on the relationship. And so, Lord, strike my enemies who they hate me, but they also hate you. They despise and have contempt for the Lord. And so punch them in the jaw, Lord, and break the bite of the wicked, right? This is break their teeth, break their bite. And why? To give David victory, not for his own sake, but for the sake of the Lord, the Lord's promises, the Lord's kingdom, right? And so as he says in verse 8, he says, I have assurance that, he lives with assurance, the confidence of the faith that deliverance and salvation comes from the Lord, and that God's blessing is guaranteed for God's people who are filled with faith in the Lord. And that's good news. Hey, thanks, friends. Have a blessed day.